Hotepu Gatekeepers. Today I wish to go over this tableau on the screen here, and this shows how the Kemau, the black people of the Nile Valley, would teach astronomy and science to their children, to their initiates. And they taught science through imagery. Unlike the whites in the West, who like to teach science through numbers and words, we of course did use numbers and words in Africa. We invented numbers and words. But we felt it was much more effective to teach people the dynamics of science by using imagery, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's easier to recall. It activates both sides of the brain, stimulates creativity, and identifies each part of your lesson, your math or science lesson, as a god, as a deity. And once you do that, once you make gravity or thermal electricity or torsion a deity, it forces the future scientists, the future initiate scientists, to treat those scientific forces of nature with reverence, with respect. And that's how we were able to be such a brilliant group of Africans in Egypt and not misuse the sciences, because every single force of nature you learned was a god. And if you play with that force of nature, you're playing with a deity, and you're going to pay. So, I want to run through this tableau very quickly to give you a taste of how that was done. So here we're looking at a tableau that outlines the basic dynamics of astronomy and therefrom astrology. Let's first give you a quick perusal of who's who. Down here, this laying type figure is Geb, the earth god. Above him is Shu with upraised arms and the sun disk. This is the god of atmosphere or air. Here is the goddess Nut, the vault of heaven or the sky, the constellations. Here we have Ra in his yellow boat here. He is the hawk-headed deity with the sun disk. In front of him is Ma'at, the principle of divine order, harmony, and scientific formulas. And over here we have Ra again. Down here we have Temu, the lord of the void or the vacuum or of neutrality of space. Okay, so this is a tableau showing you how to understand the dynamics of astronomy. Let's begin with Geb. So Geb is the earth god, that's why he's on the bottom. And of course the sky is above us. So Geb is shown as a beautiful black man who is somewhat reclining, and there is a sense with the way his body is that he's falling, that there is a sense of spin or torsion with the twists of his body. This is the Kemau way of showing that we knew the earth spun, because here we see a feeling of spinning. And this sense of falling can only be understood when you understand the concepts of gravity, that as the first white man to discover this in any kind of intelligent way was Einstein, who understood that it is the sun, or very large mass in the universe, creates a strong gravitational pull, and that what it's actually doing is, if you imagine the classic scene of a net and you put a heavy ball in the middle, how the net would warp, and then anything around the net would roll in towards the sun. So this sense of falling you're seeing here in Geb refers to that dynamic, that the gravitational field of the sun is bending and warping space-time and keeping the planets falling in towards the sun, in towards Ra, creating this kind of falling feeling. Also, the fact that he resembles that he's falling implies gravity is strong for us on Earth, because gravity means you're falling. And gravity really is, on a spiritual level, the pull towards peace, towards stillness. That in the Golden Beetle gay cosmology we teach that there are three major forces. There is possibility, and within it, it divides into two phases: on and off, up, down, hot, cold polarities. Well, the original possibilities, which give source and space to all things to exist, is one side of the universe. It is homogeneous, it is quiescent, it is still. Then within that field of stillness is a lot of action and activity and duality. So gravity, from a spiritual point of view, is the pull back towards stillness, something pulling you back towards your center, towards the earth center, towards that center that is still, that still small voice within. And then as you go driving around town and you start getting out of bed and you do your jumping jacks for your exercises, you're doing a lot of motion. But every time you move or you jump up, you're pulled back down towards some centering force. So gravity is a code word in Kemet for peace, your original nature, stillness. So all that's being hinted at in the way they drew this figure as a falling figure, meaning gravity pulling you in towards the earth center, as a figure who is falling yet twisting, meaning that the earth is spinning on its axis, and the angles of his body were the Kemetic way of depicting the mountains of the earth. How it's got mountains and valleys. Then he's shown here with these leaf-like shapes, these leaf-like drawings on him, implying that his skin is the surface of the earth and all the flora of the earth. And as Geb is also a deity of diet, he was worshipped in Kemet to keep the people's diet healthy because it's your physical body. He is the god of all things physical, of the material world, the world of phenomenal forms. And this fact of him being a rotating body that has gravity pull on us, and that the masters who drew this wanted to emphasize the plant feature of the earth, is telling us that they're emphasizing that an initiate who wants to become a true scientist should focus on eating vegetables, should be vegetarian. All that's in this one image. Okay? Now, above him is the god Shu, the god of the atmosphere, the god of the air. Now, he's shown kneeling upon a glyph. This glyph here is called the glyph Noob, or air. I'm sorry, Noob means gold. This half basket type shape here means noob or gold. So he's kneeling upon gold. Now, this is more of a spiritual component to the image. It is more of a mystical component. The gold he's kneeling on is what you may have heard of in different traditions, particularly, let's take the Dravidian black yoga system called prana. It's called chi in the Taoist systems, which came from the black Chinese of southern China, called the Naks, N like Nancy, AKHS, with the black Buddha heads and the big lips and the beautiful African nose. That this gold means there's gold in the air. He's the air, and here's the gold. This gold is the life force in the air, the chi. And above him is the sun disk that he wears, which also implies energy or chi. So he is saying that when you assume a restful pose, he's kneeling, and you do deep breathing, you take in a lot of atmosphere, a lot of oxygen. Oxygen is flammable, that's why he has a sun disk. It burns, it gives energy. Deep diaphragmatic breathing gives you lots of chi, lots of prana, lots of ashe, as they say in Yoruba. And that His upraised arms is also, that refers to a glyph called the Ka. The Ka means the inner child, the soul, the emotional receptivity to the light, that your inner child, your Ka, here, these upraised arms, should be reaching towards light, towards enlightenment, not emotionalism, not childishness when you're past 8 years old, but to enlightenment. And that when you do deep breathing, extracting the gold from the air, your soul or your emotional nature will receive light. You will become a master over your emotions. You will understand them. You will have insight or light within on them. And here, his upraised arms are bedecked with ankhs. The word ankh means life, eternal life, life force. Ankh means a mirror. Ankh is one of the words for star, a star in the sky. So he's saying here that to give yourself longevity, you want to inhale the gold within the air, the prana or the chi in the air, through what's called Swara Yoga, which is breathing yoga, or Pranayama Yoga, breathing yoga, and it will give you longevity. Now, there are 4 ankhs here, because Shu corresponds also to the brain, to the thinking component. In astrology, the air signs correspond to thinking, thought, and intelligence. So he is a god of intelligence, and he's telling you how to become smart, how to become insightful, how to get that insight from the fire within you. And that's through deep breathing. But these 4 ankhs correspond to the 4 major brain frequencies: alpha, delta, theta, and beta. And he had what was called the 4 pillars of Shu, which correspond exactly to the same 4 pillars of the major brain waves of humans, from when we're more active or stressed down to when we're more relaxed. The brain waves become more calm. So he's saying when you do deep breathing, he will give life to the 4 brainwave states, and each state is a gate to a level of awareness, a depth of thinking, or clarity of thought. And you see here, one ankh is longer than the others, and it so happens to be the ankh that is towards his back. This ankh has these 4 crossbars called the Jed column, and the Jed is the symbol of the spine. The spine, of course, is the chakras. So this ankh is saying that when you do deep breathing of the air god, you let a lot of his air into you, not only will you stabilize your 4 brain waves so you become a calm, clear thinking, wise, gay man, but also it will awaken your chakras. It will stimulate the life in your back. Ankh means life, and it's towards his back. So the life column of your back will come into life in a stable manner. And again, you see here these 4 crossbars, and you had 4 ankhs, a self-similarity here, as I discussed in my fractal podcast on the beetle, the Book of the Dead, and the Beetle of Chaos, that meditation, or Jed, this column is called the Jed column, and Jed in Egyptian means to stabilize or to meditate. So he's saying when you meditate while doing deep breathing, you will stabilize the 4 elements in you: earth, water, air, fire. Earth being money, water being emotions, air being intelligence, fire being righteous actions. You'll awaken your chakras and give life to the power of your back, the power of your chakras. And because he's doing such deep breathing, under the stars, notice this, he's under the stars. So when he's breathing, what is he concentrating on? The stars. He's trying to breathe in the life force, the chi, the knowledge, the mysteries of the heavens. And if you do that, you will receive a bright light over your head called a bright idea. The modern people put a light bulb over the head. They stole that from Kemet. We put something far more powerful than a light bulb. We put a sun disk. This is the bright idea, the insights that occur to the great African masters of breathing while looking at stars, to the great yogis of Black Dravidia, that when they would do these deep breathing exercises, they would receive bright ideas, deep epiphanies, revelations of the universe. And we see here two birds. These are not hawk birds, but kite birds. And these kite birds correspond to trance and imagination, the two forces of shamanism. Trance and imagination. That when you do deep breathing, you will fall into a trance-like state and begin to see things. Your imagination will stimulate. That while you're falling in trance, while deep breathing, stabilizing your brain waves under the stars that you contemplate, you will fall into a trance, like a reverie, and you will start receiving images of lessons and information and insights. This is exactly how the Dogon, who were the Africans of Mali, who shocked the world when the white ethnographers went to them, asked about their lore, and the Dogon mentioned that we knew that the star Sirius had a companion star called Sirius B. And the white ethnographers were shocked because this was never known in white science, and white astronomers never heard of this. And then years later, white science finally caught up with African science, and they confirmed that the Dogon were right. Then you have some idiots who say that this is because aliens came and told the Dogon, which is a very racist point of view, because you never hear them say the aliens came and built the Parthenon, built Rome, built the Colosseum. It's only when black people build great things that we must have an alien theory come in. So I'll accept the quote-unquote aliens if they say, well, the same aliens that built the pyramids must have built Rome, built the Parthenon, and built all of that stuff in the white lands of Europe. Otherwise, it was black people who were very spiritual, who were great high masters of the occult sciences, and through deep breathing fell into a trance and received images from the gods. That's what this is saying. And each of these kite birds were used in Kemet in the way that pigeons are used a lot in more modern times. These birds were actually used to help lay out or to measure latitude and longitudinal lines. The Kamau had gone to the equator and had figured out the equator is the center of the earth, and they would train these kite birds who fly like pigeons. You can train them to follow and measure lines of latitude and lines of longitude. That's why they have these lines beneath them, that their feet are morphed into this kind of solid line, because these were the birds that measured latitude longitude. This feather here, shown here and here again in a slightly different way, the feather of Ma'a means the feather of measure. This feather means to measure. So the birds are measuring the longitude and latitude lines, you see, between heaven, the sky, and earth, making thus our terrestrial grids, making our ecliptical grids, etc. Okay, now we have more of this idea of the measure by looking at this glyph here, which is an eye. And we have the eye here called this is the Ujat Abit. This is the left eye. You can tell because if the curl goes to your left hand, it's the left eye or the right brain. And this lobe here means Neb or master. It also is code for the hemisphere of the brain. So it's telling you the the right brain hemisphere perceiving something, that the right brain is turned on, that this person is in a state of hyper trance, hypersensory, almost ESP, hypersensory mode. And this I has many, many meanings. One meaning of the ujat is that I observe things. I'm basing my information not on hearsay, but on observation. What's called the scientific method. This is our word, literally, for the scientific method. So is this glyph meaning truth, which is only determined by living it, meaning experiencing it or experimenting with it. So here we have the scientific method being used in a creative manner, the right brain, and the components of this eye are very profound. This top brow is the corpus callosum in the brain. Here we have the pineal and pituitary and the medulla oblongata implied here. All the parts of the central brain is called the bird brain. This is the eye of a hawk, by the way, a bird. And that central brain is often called in science the bird brain because it resembles a bird-like structure. And one could go into this. I may do a video on the eye and all of its components. And this eye was also the symbol of fractions. Each portion of this eye, this front white part, this pupil, back white part, the brow, etc., were fractions of measure, particularly measuring of volumes. So here we're talking about that the Kemet'S were measuring not only the terrestrial lands of the Earth through the grid systems, but also the volume. They were measuring space. You see? Which is shu. Shu is air, or basic space. And you measure that through opening your right brain while observing objectively the phenomena you're looking at through the scientific method. Okay. Next we come to the sky deity, Nut, which are the constellations we see. And you can tell they're the ones that we see clearly because they're shown as five-pointed stars. Now this five-pointed star, which has become the classic icon of a star, came from Kemet. The blacks of the Nile Valley were the first to represent stars in this form, and it hasn't changed since. This little five-pointed star is very profound. It contains many ratios, contains the phi ratio, the golden ratio. It contains very magical angles, very sacred geometry angles. 72 degrees are in there, 144, 36. All of these are sacred angles inside of the shape of the star. And where the mouth of the deity is here is called the west because they said at night that Nut would swallow the sun and it would go through the body of Nut and come out born again, reborn, the next morning. And the sun goes through this process of being devoured, being digested by the cosmic forces, and then coming out again. And this looping of the sun from swallowing, digestion, to birth again is the teaching of karma. Every night when you go to sleep, Nut, or what we call Mun also, the subconscious world, the starry world, the metaphysical world, swallows your life force, which you call falling asleep, but the other world is now taking in your life force and processing it, digesting your choices, your actions, your fears, your strengths, your behaviors, digesting it, and will give birth tomorrow to a bright new karma to repay back to you what you put into the universe. So this sky deity is the universe in a certain way, and at night the universe swallows you, absorbs your energy, and then spits out the next morning a new karma for you that matched your actions the day before, the week before, the month before, the lifetime before. So this little area shows you don't escape karma. You might do dirt and think no one saw you. However, the universe saw you, karma saw you, your conscience saw you, and one day or the other, you're going to have to pay for that. Okay? Now, I want to make one detailed note here that the Kemet'S are, to my knowledge, the only people that made the sky on one level, because they made the sky both male and female. There are male sky universe deities that own the vault of heaven. One is called Hapi. One is called Geb, actually. This same deity of the earth also is called the sky god, meaning the upper earth, referring to it as a land where beings and things live. Also called Mun, the stable place, and sometimes called Nut. There were many names for the sky deities. In this form, it shows it as a female because we were the only ones in the ancient world to realize that all of the matter, all the things that make life possible, are born from the stars. So the stars are a kind of nursery that gives life to all the elements that form all things on life, on Earth. Okay? Notice her face has dots in it versus these very clearly written stars. And you see we have dots here on the outside. Well, these dots refer to, on her face, these refer to very distant stars that just look like dots to us, versus these, which are more bubble-like. And I will put a link below to a video on YouTube, I think it's from the History Channel, that discusses the bubble theory of the universe. And they are correct in that video, and how the universe, there are many universes, they're plural verses, and how they may attach or relate to each other as bubbles do to bubbles. And we're being shown here that the Kemet'S concurred that the universe, these are all universes over here, bubble universes, bound infinities, very large dots, so to speak. You see? So these dots correspond to the bubble theory of creation. Here we have Ra in his boat with the deity Ma'at, the force of science and formulas and divine order. And here's a deity called Pech, which is the hindquarters of a lion. This is the god of the subconscious. This is the deity of the subconscious mind. Here is your life force Ra, and here is the deity of measure. So what it's saying here to the initiate is that the sun of your life, your life force, must be measured astronomically or scientifically and connected to its impact on the people's subconscious impulses. That the sun sign of the zodiac must be well measured, not only in terms of its external astronomical astrophysics measurements, but measuring also how the sun's movements within the stars and planets affect your subconscious, affect the people. So this glyph in this context is directly referring to astrology. This glyph here of measure is more the astronomy side of things. So we're having the two sciences linked because we see they're wearing the same green. They're wearing self-similar colors here. Okay? On this side, it's showing the deity now in the back has a head, the head of a serpent, with the same hindquarter glyph of a lion here, but now changed to white. You see? This is the rising sun. This is sunrise. This is sunset here. And at sunrise over here, it's telling you that you want to, every morning when the sun comes up, you want to look at the measurement of the sky called your astrology measurements here, and then connect what they will do to you psychologically, meaning astrologically. Ma'at here is the measure of the sky. Pech is the meaning of that measure. You see? And you will find they are going to be the same. The karmas you have measured out for you scientifically will replay in you in a very subjective, subconscious manner. At sunset, we have the serpent here. The serpent means cycling of energy, a kind of motion, because energy moves in a sine wave like a snake. The motion of energy of your subconscious is now white, meaning it's being purified. You see? It's being mummified or purified when you go to sleep. One goal of sleep here is to purify your psychic flotsam jetsam, to repair and re-energize and purify the subconscious mind. You see? The white cloth here is saying it's trying to divinize itself. Your subconscious mind is looking for divinity, looking for the pureness of life, the pureness of the Creator, and is going down into the subconscious mind. And here we have Temu, which means the nothing, that you kind of, at a certain point of sleep, you go into non-REM. This is the deity of non-REM sleep. Also the deity of the level of cosmic matter that is homogeneous. The deepest stratum of matter is that it is homogeneous, has no shapes to it. This you call non-REM sleep, when you totally are unconscious, and it's in that time frame that we say you bathe in the waters of Temu. You bathe in the waters of Nu, which is the same as Temu here. That's when you meet your source. You go back to source. And once you go back to source each night, source repairs you, source renews you, and gives you life again for the next day. That's why you die without sleep. Scientists don't really know why we need sleep. They haven't really come to a strong, conclusive reason as to why we must have sleep. I just told you what it is. You have to return to your maker. You've got to return to the source, to the origin of the universe, to get life again. And if you don't do that, you go crazy because you've lost connection to your source. And here he's holding this kind of net garment. Yes? This net is saying that when you go into that deep REM state, he catches how you clothed your thoughts. In other words, the forms your thoughts took were considered as clothing, because the word for image is tut, like King Tut, King Tut, Tutankhamun. Tut means an image. It also means to clothe. It also means to beget or to give birth to. So he's saying here that as you go into the subconscious sleep mode, the thoughts and consciousness level you had with your karmas that day shall be captured and processed into the deep recesses of the universe. And the universe will be aware of what you've done to it and will eventually feed back to you in a fractal feedback loop, a karma tomorrow, adjusting you. If you did evil, it's going to build up over and over and over as you go to sleep, which is where the conscience is judged while you fall asleep. Every night you have what's called the judgment scene. And that's going to go into the universe. And the universe is going to feed back to you a response to correct you if you're doing things that are destabilizing the divine order. This Ma'at figure here, the divine order. You can't play with the divine order. You can't play with karma and think there's no consequence. Only a fool will think such a thing. You see? So, we also have here on the boat, by the way, these little dots here. The difference between these dots in the yellow boat, which you also see in this boat here, the dots in the face and the circles here is that these grow in size from dots to bigger circles. And here we have, in this boat, we have 24 dots, which correspond to the 24 hours of the day. This is telling us that we knew the 24 hours of Ra, the day, the sun. And here we have 29 dots, I believe, or 27, but 29 and 27 link to the moon cycle, because at night the moon comes out. So we have this boat giving the initiate the refresher of you should study the moon's phases each night as part of your work, your astronomy work, as you go to sleep into trance on your day's karmas through your chart. You see, the Egyptians, these Africans, would condense such vast stores of information in these glyphs. You can see why they're much superior to how the white people teach their citizens through that left brain verbal language. But this is packing so much information of a spiritual nature, of a biophysical nature, of an astrophysics nature, of a geography nature. It's all in one. And this is why the Africans outpaced all the ancient empires. There were many black empires in that area. There was, of course, Kemet, the black people of the Nile Valley. You had the black people of southern India, the Dravidians, the Dalit people, who were the Indus Kush. Kush means Ethiopia, or the black land of Ethiopia. You had the Canaanites, who were Africans. You had the Phoenicians, who were Africans. You had of course, the true Somali people, the Kush people of southern Egypt. You have these great African empires, but one beat them all, and that was the Egyptians, the Kemet'S of the Nile Valley. That's because, to a large degree, we never left drawing. Our script, our language, was always pictographic, hieroglyphic. And that makes you learn faster, because you can process more data in a picture than through verbalization. This, the whites have understood in modern times, but they've used this power of the imagination, of images, to basically rape your mind to buy things. That's why commercials use images more than a bunch of words on a screen. The only time you see words on a screen is when they want to give you the fine print of the contract, and they show it real fast so you don't get it. Or you watch many of those commercials about white people's medicine, which Paxil and all these things, and it tells you, as you're seeing a family with beautiful music, playing volleyball together with grandpa, or, by the ocean, whatever, this beautiful idyllic scene. But if you listen to the words, this medicine can cause heart failure, irritable bowel syndrome, can result in internal bleeding. I mean, they go on and on and on with these horrors of side effects. But you don't really register that because you're looking at the beautiful picture of grandpa catching a ball with his little granddaughter on the beach as the dog runs by with a bone. Pictures. So the white world understands this concept that pictures inspire people and teach more information. But in Kemet, it was illegal to use pictures that did not bring people to the gods. So you would never see commercials or TV programs in Egypt if they had those features, like you do see in the white world. Okay? So, this glyph, this tableau, covers a lot. There is a lot hiding in here. I want to also make sure I cover this glyph here called the wasp staff. This wasp staff has many meanings. One of it is the chakras. It's on the sleeping side, the west or the sleeping side of the sky, meaning your chakras activate at night. Your karmas read you at night while you're dreaming, and many of your dreams are playing out theatrically of your karma, or mythically of your karmas of the day. But the wasp staff also means it was a stick, it was a staff you would carry, and you see it has this forked bottom for catching snakes, to pin a snake. meaning to pin your reptilian, nasty, foolish, selfish ways, your reptile brain. But they would also stick it in the sand to serve as a sundial, because you would stick it in the sand and then you watch the shadows that it makes, and you could tell if you understood this, how to read shadows. You would read this, what time it was. So it was a way of looking at the measure of time, kind of a walking diurnal calendar. Yes? And I believe we've covered the main features here. This little glyph here is a symbol of the executioner's block. Here, this little black looking shape here. This means that when you fall asleep, you are judged each night about that day's events, and you will undergo the trials, and it may activate the execution of you in terms of your psyche, your subconscious will start to create karmas that will kill your bad behaviors, make you pay. This glyph means you're going to pay. You're going to have execution if you keep playing around. Okay? And I believe that covers almost everything. Here's the word Geb, his name written out in glyphs. Here is the word Shu written out in glyphs. This is the word for east, written out here. And this is the word for Duat. Duat meaning sky or the spirit world or the starry world. And also sometimes this image of the sky god, goddess Nut, can correspond to the Milky Way, telling the initiate to look at the position of the Milky Way, which changes positions overnight, over time. Yes? Giving you a sense of direction. We have the bubble state theory of the universes, the multiverses. And that's pretty much it. Geb, rotation, the earth, gravity. Shu, the air, the atmosphere, which is luminous. Yes, and how breathing can stabilize the four brain patterns, awakening the chakras as you inhale the gold or prana of the air, and that the kite birds were used to cast the longitude-latitude measures. This glyph means measure, this glyph means measure. These two lines mean latitude-longitude. That we have the sky and the distant stars, and the geometry of the stars here. We have morning and evening sun, and how the astronomy measures link to meaning as astrology. The bubble state universe is here. We have deep sleep, going to the deepest stratum of cosmic matter, returning to source, where your karmas are caught and judged here, fed into the universe, which will feed back to you what you fed it. And those are the main features of this tableau. There are many more things I could go into, but I think we can stop there. And I hope this gave you a sense of how, in the Golden Beetle Gay Men's Shamanic Training, how I teach the brothers science from an African point of view, how we teach it from a Kemetic African artistic point of view. The function of art is to reveal the science of nature. Its function is not really to make you feel good, but to balance out the flows of the divine within you. Any other use of art was considered vulgar and illegal. In fact, it was punishable by incarceration in Kemet. You could not make statues and songs and tunes that were not of the gods, not of the temples and of the temple canon, the temple traditions. Because every piece of art throws the viewer or listener into the place the artist went spiritually to see or hear that form. If the artist is crazy and tweaked out and drugged out, they went to some crazy cracked inner world, dragged out some horror, and called it art. So when you look at that, you're being transported back to that place that the crazy person went to hear or write or draw that piece. So we knew this. So we said we don't want the people exposed to neurotic states of consciousness of crazy artists who were high and drunk and tweaked out and imbalanced. So that's why it was illegal, because it would suck people into dimensions of the psyche, psychic dimensions that were dangerous. So, I pray you enjoyed this. Be well, Dwawend Hotepu.